after that short break. Now we have a session on business progress and gender equity by Ms. Geeta Goti. Ms. Geeta Goti is the Director People Team of ProArc IT Solutions Private Limited. She is a professional social worker having expertise in HR, compliance management, and corporate governance. She is a former independent director, NSIC Limited, managing trustee, Wishes Foundation, and joint secretary, Hyderabad City Security Council. She's an internal member on prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplaces. Senior HR professional with more than 30 years of industry experience, managed multinational and SME companies, standing committee member in National Hyderabad Network, coaching women in building associations working on entrepreneurship, setting up entrepreneurship centers in colleges for marginalized communities. She's also working on public health, entrepreneurship, and women's security. Thank you so much, Ms. Geeta Goti, for joining us today. Over to you for your session.
Thank you, Aparna. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to talk about the subject which is very close to my heart. And I'm just taking an instance which happened 20 years back in one of the NHRD conferences that I happened to write a research paper on business progress and gender equity. And it so happened this topic is so close. I've been working last 20 years, and I find that it has taken a very slow pace for bringing in this kind of an equity. And there are so many hurdles which we are even now going through. And as Anandita has given some insights, and also Dr. Amina has given some insights, I also have some insights from my profession, which is human resource development. So two major things have happened. Generally, we take the Industrial Revolution or the Second World War or the Great Depression as examples when we talk about the huge transformation or renaissance or changes coming into the society. But here I'm taking the crossing of a millennium, and also the recent COVID pandemic, which has thrown us off the normal track and brought us into the new normal. So the first thing, which when we talk about equality, right, 22 decades back when I was talking about equity, I had to keep on explaining that equity is not just the finance part of the language, but also it connects with all the other spheres. So gender equity, when we look at it, is the fairness of treatment for men and women and men according to their respective needs. So equality we talk about, but equity is something which is the first step, I think, to reach the equality. This may include equal treatment and treatment that is different, but which is considered equal in terms of rights, benefits, obligations, and opportunities. So what happens when we gain gender equity? So the future of having a parity and also the abundance of opportunity. Today, when we are looking at post-pandemic and pandemic, while all this first level, second level, third level kind of distinction we are making within the pandemic period, we see that there is an increased economic opportunity for businesses globally. However, we are not ready for it. Solutions to a worsening labor shortage with all the migration and during the pandemic, the opportunities have to be given at the marginalized societies like rural poor and people who moved from cities to their own villages. So the labor shortage again is felt, and this is an opportunity for bringing in more women into the workforce. Diverse representation among political leadership. We have seen the gender gap, which most of the research papers have been reading, have pointed out to those countries where women are leading have a lesser gap compared to what it was earlier. So probably those are some instances we can look at. And also the further innovation in tech and startup industries. And this is another thing which most of the countries are speaking about, that typically MSME, the ministries are also talking about exchanging innovation and tech startup industries, collaborations and all that. And we can't afford to miss out one gender in that. So gender equality causes leaky pipeline. So we are already witnessing that. And with this condition across the world, I think We are now geared up to take up more on the gender side. But are we ready for that? So these are some facts and figures which any one of us can gain insights from. But what I want you to look at is the last two statements, which says more than 100 countries have taken action to track budget allocations for gender equality. And we are now talking about gender budget. Even in India, there's been a lot of research as well as policy advocacy being done. But at least we started doing it. Earlier, we didn't even know about this. The proportion of women in paid employment outside the agriculture sector is increasing. The service industries are picked up. And the caregiving industry, though we call it as hospitality and healthcare, but majority of the jobs recently we have seen has gone up because of the pandemic. So we are at the right space to gain from this. So what's happening? Let us look at the gender. We all know, the speakers as well as the audience here are aware about the World Economic Forum, the key drivers for understanding the gender gap is economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment. These are the measures which get checked at the country level. Health and survival, power empowerment. Whereas in the corporate level, when we look at it, we always know about the succession planning, female leadership and talent pipeline, equal pay and gender pay parity, inclusive culture, sexual harassment related policies to prevent sexual harassment, and also pro women brand. And when Anandita was speaking, I could see that, being a woman in corporate communications, though people look at it as more of a feminine kind of a role, but then the language and the entire presentation of that corporate as pro women brand might bring up more kind visibility and also better practices. So gender equality is the end, but gender equity is the means for that. So women and economy. So what are the things we need to look at? When I looked up, I felt that the promoting and facilitating women economic rights and independence by seamless access to employability, skill, and mentoring. Even at college level, we find the girl students, though they are intelligent and they're bright and they might be getting great ranks which gets published in the newspapers and all, but when it comes to the hiring level, except for IT companies, other companies, in some service companies probably, but the female ratio of converting to a corporate job is very less. And also employment opportunities creation itself has a huge bias. Improved working conditions is what we need. Yeah, I still remember 2 3 decades ago when we were working, even the washrooms were, I mean, now there is a culture of unisex, a kind of places. But then in those times, it was very difficult to visit a washroom which was also used by men. So the sensitivity was not there. Then the market rate, when I'm talking about entrepreneurship and women in entrepreneurship, a lot of times the derailing factors will be networking and trading market linkages and all that. So that is another thing where probably we need to focus. No occupation segregation. So there are certain occupations which are seen as women oriented, probably it is time for us to even de-glamorize those occupations and bring in more of harmonizing work and family roles. With the pandemic, I have seen that initially there was a spurt of people talking about women are good to be now at home and work also, it's so suiting for them, and the productivity has gone up and all that. But I've also seen on the other side the violence, the passive aggression, and the stress, the burnout has also gone up. So probably these are some aspects which we need to look at. Coming to the power distribution and decision making, of course, unless we create an environment and a conscious environment, not tokenism, but a conscious environment where you have access to power structure and decision making. We are talking about having 30% reservation for women in the political leadership. We have seen the time is going by, but we have not even achieved that number. We are still struggling to get there. Capacity to participate in decision making and leadership. We have very good examples in some of the states where women are leading, and also some decisions are very much pro women as well as more humanistic. So elimination of discrimination against women under law and practice also is one big thing when we are talking about. It's not just having a legislation but also practice. When we deal with cases of domestic violence, I have seen that while the law is taking its own course, the judiciary also takes a longer time to give justice. So probably the practices we need to look at. And achieving legal literacy. When why am I talking about these generic social stuff is because I feel that to progress in the business, these are all the barriers which are coming. The legal literacy also. How many of us even talk about labor legislations, labor laws? It even in a corporate, it is given to it is relegated to somebody who is an admin, and that person has to take care. But we as women, do we know the rights in the labor market? Do I know what rights as an employee I need to know? So lack of knowledge also creates sometimes huge problems. Increasing participation as digital citizens. Of course, women, it's not just the urban or the young and agile people, but also everybody have to have that knowledge these days. And how many of facilitation centers are there where people, women, elderly women or women who are having a challenge to get understand the digital world, are given promoted to get into these kind of activities. And also balanced and non-stereotyped portrayal in the media. Very, very true. 20 years back when we were writing this article, I have seen that one of my colleagues was talking about a perfume advertisement. And he was saying, yeah, I see that this perfume is excellent because of the picture on that. So of a woman who was, portrayed on that particular package. So I said, what has it got to do with the perfume? But then that's how the media was represented at that time. Even now we see some examples of that. However, it has come down. It's good, but then the media representation in other places has gone up much more, which has to be more regulated, I feel. So unless we have certain affirmations, the global reality, all of us have, except for the ranking of countries, every country has certain, discrimination or, activities which are given less importance, and gender discrimination is high. It's not only gender of women. When I'm talking, it's not men, women, it's also the third gender. So, but the local specificity is very much important. So we need affirmations from corporate world. Affirmations to be included in the policies and internal processes also. Key indicators to be published. When we talk about a corporate being a best employer or a great place to work, we have certain parameters where we assess or measure or even look at what factors have contributed. But then when somebody is identified as the best employer, the practices have to be seamlessly unbiased and also indiscriminate. Not having any discrimination against any gender. And these parameters we feel sometimes, though the ranking is given, but are missing. So it's more to do with being in spirit and not just on an publishing or getting a rank. So gender equality needs consideration and not concessions, and also not tokenism. I have seen in most of the corporates which get ranked very great, there's a lot of tokenism and also external visibility driven communication. So there are a few things which I have published here, which talk about how a code, a conduct, or how do we express ourselves as a corporate to be identified as either gender neutral or gaining equality for women. So one code which I looked at, there are some 10 codes which I published, and I thought it's good to share in this forum. And all these are very relevant. So the code, if we are saying that we believe in giving equal opportunity in employment to women, men, and LGBTQ, I think we have to make it as a practice as well. The credo is very important. It's not just, making some statements. So we should advertise, attract, and retain talent at all levels without gender bias. We shall audit all the stages in selection process to eliminate possibility of favoring any one gender. And also, very importantly, I've seen in corporates, we need to train and ensure certified interview panel is engaged. One example recently, when I was trying to place some marginalized students who were the first time going into a corporate world, I had to request that corporate asking them, can you please change your panel or can I address your panel before they take the interviews? Because it was very important for them to know what kind of a candidate is sitting across them and what is expected in that interview for selection that candidate also is made aware of. So there is a huge, biased view about rural, individuals coming into urban, and there are a lot of perceptions around certain communities and the language barriers. So these are the ones which we need to crack it and then give that little concession so that they move into the next level. Second code we can look at is we shall create organizational excellence by recognizing the talent of both men and women. Okay? Even within the organization, when the jobs are identical, the kind of treatment women get is slightly different. Sometimes, it is not taken as important their, the contributions they make. So the recognition is not even, given to them. So we shall identify, nurture, and promote performance excellence of talent. Here, I'm not saying women, but then talent. All learning opportunities as per personal needs with no discrimination in recognizing and rewarding and training. When we are saying, I mean, this seems to a very loaded kind of a credo, but then when it comes to practice in an organization, the HR policies and also the processes are so well written. But when it comes to making a decision, we find sometimes, not always, but sometimes men are given more weightage than women. And when the reasons they give are so biased, like somebody says, oh, she just came from a maternity leave, oh, her child is 2 years old. But I keep asking her, did you ask her? Why are you not talking about the same thing for men? Even the man must be having a 2-year-old kid or 1-year-old kid. Why are you not, getting that question in your head? So these are a few things which come up when in practice. Other thing I've seen is, this third code which I put here is we should publish our policies, manuals, and quality documents addressing all genders. Of course, there's a huge change these days on the documentation where they are gender neutral or they are addressed with all the genders. So it's important to cover all publications document policies with vocabulary and tone representing all genders. So this, I think, to a large extent, corporates are following, and it's a good practice. Next code is we shall ensure that the language used in our internal and external correspondence is free from gender bias. Though we have come to a certain stage of addressing, all genders in our communication, written communication, when it comes to external correspondence and internal correspondence, we still have certain biases coming in. We shall be conscious of language that addresses all genders, including the third gender. We will place checkpoints to ensure it is uniformly adopted and reviewed periodically. I've also seen some of the human resource functionaries just doing copy paste of policies from other companies. So, culturally, we should also be very sensitive about at what evolution this company is and where they have to go. What is their plan for growth? All these things also matter a lot when you put those statements in the policies, because otherwise it becomes so difficult to interpret and abide by that. The fifth code, which we can see, is we shall ensure that our promotional material and campaigning is free from using offensive symbols. Even today, we are seeing that some symbols or the shapes of the containers or the packaging material is so offensive in certain products. So our advertising material, design, campaigning, and packaging of products are free from using symbols which are offensive to women or projecting eroticism. So this consciousness have to come even in the customer, or the buyer, whoever it is. So we should not get into a space where we are promoting this as a customer. The sixth code, we shall provide equal opportunity to both men, women and men for career advancement, career planning, and training and development aspects. We shall review all aspects of career advancement to check and provide opportunities. We shall educate all our decision makers on the possible bias that denies women considered for career growth. And we are all complaining about lack of women leaders at the top, or there is a glass ceiling and people are not going beyond certain careers. It is very good to see the numbers have gone up in the information technology and technology space, but very few have gone up to the ladder. And if you look at it, the reasons, lot of times we keep hearing that they are not interested or they are not ready for it. So when do they get ready and interested is when you create those environments around them. There has to be a formal, what you call, a space for them to come out and then give their best and also look forward for the next position. So that environment has to be created by the leadership of the company, and that is very important, and conscious effort has to go into it. How do we do and what do we do is a different discussion. But then first of all, are we ready to do that? Seventh code, we shall deal with sexual harassment fairly and firmly. Just believe me that when we were writing this in a particular forum, when I was discussing in the year 2000, it was just then that India has first seen the landmark judgment of Vishaka guidelines in the case of harassment, sexual harassment case, where the lady was fighting for justice for 5 years before this landmark judgment has come. And it took almost more than a decade for a judgment to become an act. So if India can see it takes 1 decade and several women at workplace suffered, it calls for a lot of attention when we are talking about the third gender being equally treated. So where are we now? So we need to wait for another 10 years for them to get justice? No. We are already in a space where we can create. We have the power to create that. So we shall create forum for detecting and assisting in handling the cases of sexual harassment, handle complaints with sensitivity, and take action proportionate to the offenses in proven cases. This is happening because the act is there. But there's a lot to do because not even 20-30% of the companies have adapted it, in spite of the company law amended in 2013 says that they have to make a internal committee in their organization and it has to be reported in their annual report. Then there is a penalty of 50,000 if they don't do it. In spite of that, it has now become a tokenism in some of the companies. The best places to work, yes, they are doing it. So if a company wants to be in the best race, probably these are the things as a compliance they should create it. Code number 8, we should ensure that our suppliers of goods and services, outsourced partners are selected, evaluated on ability than on gender. Like certain professions or certain work is relegated to gender, certain products and services are also relegated to gender. So I think probably it's time for us to evaluate once more whom we are partnering and are we getting biased because of the gender. So we shall, in all our external relationship, consciously ensure gender equity to assessing the abilities of our suppliers of goods and services, collaborators, and other such personnel purely on their capabilities than gender. So this conscious effort, unless there is an audit, people don't realize that it is important. It should not be because of an audit or because of some inspection or some monitoring that we need to do it. It has to come from our consciousness, and only then I think there's a difference we are making. We plan meticulously our employees' welfare schemes and facilities to suit both men and women. Very important. I still remember when I was working in a manufacturing company that there were wonderful welfare schemes talked about in the Factories Act. But when it comes to the facilities at infrastructure and on the shop floor or in the offices, it was not seen. Of course, there were inspectors coming and, giving good reports about it. But I think gone are those days. Now, most of the organizations have these, and more so in the environment of pandemic, there is a huge need of rethinking, redesigning, and also re-evaluating our welfare schemes. At least I know the organization where I work, the minute the pandemic has hit, immediately there was a term life insurance taken for all the employees. And it's not just 5-10 lakhs, it was 50 lakhs. So that shows the consciousness and sensitivity of this organization. So we shall be sensitive to the special requirements of women employees during pregnancy, postnatal, and nursing stages. We would also keep in mind the requirements of male employees in assisting his family during these stages. Very importantly, we have to, when we are talking about having equality, we should also reciprocate and give those benefits where some of the men might need all this. Finally, I think we need to promote a culture of equity in experience. These days, we are not talking about employee engagement and all that. Though the terminology is changing, I think it's more to do with the employee experience, especially the women employee experience. So we shall challenge at every step to minimize and erase unconscious bias, passive aggression, patriarchy mindset, conditional thinking, and unreasonable expectations that are subjected towards any gender. And if your learning and development team is not aware about these aspects, probably you're not there to bridge the gap for gender equality. So ultimately, I just want to submit that if we have education and gender equality, the other five SDGs are also taken care. I'm sure all the speakers also would be speaking on this. Include all genders to understand the gap and participate to bridge the gap. It's not just the women we are talking. We are talking about men, women, and other gender. Gender equality will increase the GDP of the country. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Geeta ma'am, for that powerful and eye-opening presentation. And thank you so much for joining us today. We are now taking questions.